Black poor boy intentionally angers billionaire to save his empire. The truth shocks him. The morning rush on Market Street freezes when a small boy steps in front of a billionaire's limousine. 5-year-old Terrell Banks, his sneakers torn and shirt faded, stands firm as security shouts for him to move. But he doesn't. His voice shakes, yet it cuts through the city noise. "You're a fake. You say you care about people, but you're just like the others." Gasps ripple through the crowd. Vincent Carver, the 35-year-old CEO of Horizon Financial, stares down at the child blocking his way. Cameras flash. Pedestrians whisper. Terrell's eyes are wet, but his stance doesn't change. Before anyone can stop him, he grabs Vincent's briefcase, flings it across the polished lobby floor, and papers scatter everywhere. Security rushes forward. Vincent, furious, bends to collect his documents, then freezes. One page stands out. A transfer order for $300 million, signed with his name, but he never signed it. Terrell's small voice trembles. "I told you, sir, the bad man is going to steal from you today." What would you do if a child tried to save everything you built? Tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for tomorrow's powerful story. The night before everything changed, the Horizon Financial building was nearly empty. The offices on the 39th floor were silent except for the faint hum of air conditioning and the soft scrape of a mop moving across polished tile. In the corner, 5-year-old Terrell Banks sat cross-legged beside a yellow cleaning cart, clutching a small toy car that had long since lost one of its wheels. He was supposed to stay quiet while his grandmother, Dorothy, cleaned the executive suites. Dorothy Banks was tired, her knees aching after working 2 other jobs that day, but her back stayed straight and her eyes sharp. She took pride in her work, even if the people who passed her in the daytime never looked twice. Her grandson had begged to come along tonight. He said he didn't want her to be alone so late. She hadn't planned on him tagging along, but she also couldn't afford a sitter. "Stay right here, baby," she whispered, her gray hair tied up under a scarf. "Don't touch anything, and don't wander off." "I won't," Terrell promised. But curiosity always pulled at him. The offices were full of shiny things: glass walls, gold nameplates, big desks that looked like they belonged to kings. Everything smelled like coffee and money. As Dorothy cleaned the break room, Terrell wandered to the hallway near the conference room door. He was tracing his toy car along the baseboard when he heard voices. At first, he thought maybe security was doing rounds, but the tone made him freeze. "By 9 tomorrow, it'll all be mine," a man's voice said, low and laughing. "He'll sign it himself and never see it coming." Terrell crouched behind the cleaning cart, heart pounding. He peeked through the wheels and saw 2 men standing near the window. One was tall with sandy hair and an expensive-looking suit. He was holding a phone, pacing back and forth. The other man leaned against the table, smirking. "Preston," the one on the phone said, "you sure the system won't flag it?" Preston Whitfield. Terrell didn't know the name, but he would remember the sound of that voice forever. "The authorization runs at 9:15, Preston replied. "By then, he'll be in the board meeting, all eyes on the expansion vote. The transfer hits the offshore account, I move it through 2 shells, and it's gone. $300 million. Clean, simple, done." Terrell didn't understand everything, but he knew the number sounded huge. He'd seen his grandma's paycheck. Numbers like that didn't exist in their world. He also caught another word: fool. Preston called someone that fool who was too trusting. Terrell didn't have to guess who it was. He'd seen Vincent Carver's photo before. Dorothy had shown it to him from a newspaper. "That man there," she'd said, "he's one of the good ones. Helped my friend Lorraine keep her home when the bank tried to take it. Don't let anyone tell you all rich folks are bad. Some still remember what people go through." Now, hearing the laughter from the men in the next room, Terrell felt something twist in his chest. They were going to steal from that man, his grandma's good one. He wanted to tell her right away, but when he turned, she was still in another office. He crept closer to the doorway. The men were gone now, but papers were scattered across the conference table. One sheet lay half-crumpled near the trash can. It looked important, lines of numbers, typed names, and a messy signature. Something told him this was part of what they'd been talking about. He hesitated only a second before grabbing it and folding it into his pocket. When Dorothy came back, she saw his face. "What's wrong, baby? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I heard men talking, Grandma," he whispered. "They said they're gonna steal from Mr. Carver. A lot of money." She sighed deeply. "Terrell, you shouldn't listen to grown-up talk that don't concern us." But they called him a fool. They said by 9 tomorrow it'll be theirs. He pulled the wrinkled paper from his pocket. "I took this. Maybe it can help." Dorothy gasped and grabbed his hand. "Boy, what did I tell you about touching things in other people's offices? You can't just take papers. People lose their jobs over things like that." "I had to," he said, his small voice trembling. "If they hurt him, Grandma, that's wrong. You said he's one of the good ones." Dorothy's anger faded. She sank into a chair, looking at the paper he'd stolen. Her eyes scanned the strange numbers, the signature, the words she couldn't make sense of. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she looked at her grandson with tired, loving eyes. "You've got your mama's heart," she said softly. "Always trying to fix the world. But this is big people's trouble." Terrell looked down, holding back tears. "If good people don't help, the bad ones win, right?" Dorothy's lips trembled. "Sometimes the truth needs a loud voice," she murmured, repeating something she used to tell him. "But baby, you gotta be smart about it." That night, as she tucked him into his small bed back home, Terrell couldn't sleep. The paper lay under his pillow, folded tight. He kept thinking about the man who had helped people he didn't even know. What if those men really stole from him? What if no one else believed a kid like him? By sunrise, he'd made up his mind. If he couldn't stop them, he'd make the man listen. Even if it meant getting yelled at. Even if he got in trouble. When Dorothy left for her morning shift, Terrell slipped out behind her. He wore his cleanest shirt, the faded red one, and the sneakers with duct tape holding them together. The city was already busy when he reached Market Street, but he didn't care. He found the tall glass building his grandmother cleaned every night. He stood outside, clutching the crumpled paper, practicing his words under his breath. He knew rich people didn't stop for kids like him. They were always in a hurry. So he told himself, if the man won't listen, make him mad. Make him stop. He took a deep breath as the limousine approached. It was time. Vincent Carver had never thought of himself as extraordinary. He liked to believe he'd simply worked harder and cared more than most people in his field. His beginnings were far from glamorous. Born to a steelworker father and a public school teacher mother in Pittsburgh, where the winters were long and the dreams were small. His parents never had much, but they had honesty, and they passed that down to him like a family heirloom. His father used to say, "You don't measure a man by what he earns, but by who trusts him with their paycheck." Vincent built his life around that idea. When he graduated from Wharton, he could have joined any of the big banks that courted him, but he didn't. Instead, he rented a small, drafty office above a bakery in South Philly. It smelled like cinnamon rolls and ambition. With 2 folding chairs and a second-hand computer, he started Horizon Financial. His goal was simple: give working families a fair shot at stability. 15 years later, Horizon managed pensions and savings for thousands of teachers, firefighters, nurses, and small-town clerks across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. He became known in financial circles as the Boy Scout, a man who refused to play dirty even when the market demanded it. To some, that made him old-fashioned. To others, it made him reliable. But the last 6 months had tested every inch of that reputation. The markets had been unpredictable, investors nervous, and his company's growth had begun to slow. Every decision felt like walking a tightrope over open air. Vincent had been working 18-hour days, skipping meals, sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night. His penthouse apartment in Rittenhouse Square felt more like a place to shower than a home. Still, this morning felt different. This was supposed to be the turning point. The expansion into Baltimore and Washington, D.C. had taken 2 years of negotiations, forecasts, and late-night calls. If today's board vote went as planned, Horizon would double its reach by next quarter. At precisely 7:15 a.m., his black Lincoln pulled up outside his building. His driver, Raymond, greeted him with a polite nod as always. Vincent stepped in, briefcase in hand, already flipping through his notes on the tablet. The city was waking up, street vendors opening carts, commuters rushing by, the hum of Philadelphia alive with purpose. His calendar blinked with reminders: 8 a.m., review board presentation 9 a.m., expansion vote, critical, 9:15 a.m., post-vote transfer authorizations 10 a.m., press release coordination. He felt a flicker of pride reading those lines. Every time he'd been told a man couldn't build an ethical firm and still survive on Wall Street's edges, he'd pushed harder. Preston Whitfield had been there from the start, his Wharton roommate, his first investor, and now his CFO. Preston had charm where Vincent had discipline. Together, they'd built something that seemed untouchable. As the car glided through Market Street, Vincent's thoughts wandered to Preston's steady presence over the years. They'd celebrated every milestone side by side: their first $1 million fund, their first big client win, the night they toasted Horizon's 10th anniversary on the rooftop with their staff. Preston was more than a colleague, he was family. Vincent trusted him without question. That trust was what allowed him to sleep, even in the hardest times. He sipped his coffee, scanning the briefing report one last time. Everything appeared perfect. The legal team had cleared the expansion paperwork, compliance was in order, and the transfer authorizations for the new regional accounts were scheduled for review later in the day. Vincent leaned back in the seat, loosening his tie for a moment. He thought of his father again, how the old man would have loved to see what his son had built. "You did it the right way," he could almost hear him say. "No shortcuts." By the time the Lincoln turned the corner and slowed before Horizon's mirrored glass tower, Vincent felt ready. He was running on coffee and adrenaline, but it didn't matter. Today would mark the next chapter. Raymond stepped out to open the door. The building gleamed in the morning sun, a symbol of everything Vincent had worked for. He adjusted his cufflinks and prepared to step into the day that would define the company's future. But fate, as it often does, had other plans waiting on the sidewalk. Across the plaza, a boy stood near the revolving doors. He couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, skinny, with a backpack too big for his frame and sneakers held together with tape. His clothes were clean but worn, his expression tight with determination. At first, Vincent thought the kid might be waiting for someone. But when the boy spotted him, his eyes widened. He started running. "Mr. Carver!" the boy yelled, his small voice echoing off the glass walls. "Please. You gotta listen." Vincent froze mid-step. The doorman looked confused. Pedestrians slowed, curious. The boy skidded to a stop a few feet away, breathless, clutching a crumpled piece of paper like it was treasure. "Mr. Carver, it's important. They're gonna steal from you." Security moved forward automatically, but Vincent lifted a hand, stopping them. Something in the boy's voice, earnest, terrified, real, made him pause. "Son," Vincent said carefully, "who are you talking about?" The boy's chest heaved as he spoke. "The man with the glasses. He said by 9 tomorrow it'll all be his." Vincent frowned, the words slipping past his guard before his brain caught up. There was something about the way the boy said it, urgent, certain, that cut through the noise of the morning. He should have brushed it off. He had meetings to run, votes to win, a company to protect. But he didn't. Instead, he found himself bending slightly, studying the child's face. There was no guile there. Just fear, and something else. Conviction. Raymond whispered from behind him, "Sir, we should head inside." But Vincent couldn't move. For reasons he couldn't explain, he knew he had to hear the boy out. "Tell me what you mean," he said quietly. And just like that, the morning that should have marked his greatest victory began to slip into something entirely different. Terrell's voice sliced through the morning rush like a siren. "You're a fake. You tell everyone you care about people, but you're just like the others." Every conversation in the plaza stopped. Executives on their phones lowered their devices. Pedestrians froze mid-step. Even the doorman hesitated, caught between duty and disbelief. Vincent Carver stood there, briefcase in hand, staring at the tiny figure before him. For a split second, he wasn't the billionaire CEO or the man about to lead a crucial board vote. He was just stunned. Security stepped forward. "Sir, do you want us to?" "No," Vincent said, waving them off. His tone was calm, but his jaw tightened. He turned to the boy. "Where are your parents? What are you talking about?" Terrell didn't back down. His lip trembled, but his eyes stayed locked on Vincent's. "You have to listen. They're gonna take your money, all of it. My grandma cleans your offices. I heard them last night in the big room upstairs. They said by 9 it'll be done." The bad man laughed. Vincent blinked, not sure he'd heard right. "You what?" "I was with her 'cause we can't pay for daycare," Terrell rushed on, his voice cracking. "I wasn't supposed to be there, but I heard them. He said you'd never notice until it's too late." A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Someone began filming. A few employees standing by the doors exchanged uncertain glances. Vincent could feel the heat of embarrassment creep up his neck. He was being shouted at by a child, in public. "Son," he said, steady but firm, "that's enough. Whatever game you're playing, it's not funny. Go find your grandmother." Terrell's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not lying." Before Vincent could respond, the boy's small hands reached for his briefcase. Startled, Vincent pulled it back, but Terrell's grip was quick. The case slipped open, and in one explosive motion, Terrell flung it across the gleaming marble floor. The crowd gasped. Papers flew like white confetti, contracts, reports, and internal memos scattering underfoot. Vincent's patience snapped. "Enough," he thundered, striding forward as security surged behind him. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Terrell shrank back, breathing fast, his hands trembling. But through the chaos, one paper, creased and smudged, fluttered across the floor and stopped at Vincent's feet. He bent to pick it up, ready to shove it back into his case. But as his eyes ran over the page, his expression froze. The document was a transfer authorization, official Horizon financial letterhead, stamped and approved. His own digital signature marked the bottom. But the destination account number didn't belong to any partner fund. It was an offshore account, one he didn't recognize. And the scheduled execution time at the top read 9:15 a.m. A chill rippled down his spine. He looked closer. The document listed the total amount, $300 million. Drawn directly from the company's pension funds. Funds belonging to teachers, firefighters, retirees. The kind of people Horizon had built its name protecting. Vincent's pulse thundered in his ears. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, turning to Terrell. The boy's voice was barely a whisper. "It was in the trash on the top floor. I saw the man with glasses put it there after he laughed on the phone. He said by 9, it'd be all his." Vincent's eyes narrowed. "The man with glasses? Who are you talking about?" Terrell hesitated, then said softly, "Mr. Preston." For a moment, the sound of the city disappeared. Vincent's chest felt tight, as if the air had thickened. Preston Whitfield. His CFO. His closest friend. The man who had stood by his side since the company's first loan. The one who'd handled every major transaction since the beginning. No. It couldn't be. Vincent forced his thoughts to slow. You're saying you saw Mr. Whitfield with this paper? Last night. Terrell nodded quickly. He switched the papers, sir. I saw him. He told someone on the phone that you'd be busy with your meeting at 9. The time. The transfer. The perfect distraction. Vincent's world tilted. It was too detailed to be random, too exact to be a coincidence. He glanced at his watch, 8:46 a.m. In less than half an hour, the transfer would go through. He straightened slowly, his expression hardening. The crowd was still watching, whispers spreading. The security guard stood uncertain, waiting for direction. Sir, one of them asked, should we remove the boy? Vincent shook his head. No, his voice was quiet, steady, but it carried authority. He's coming with me. Terrell blinked in surprise. Am I in trouble? Vincent looked down at him, his eyes no longer angry, but clear and focused. No, son, he said softly. You might have just saved my company. The security guards exchanged glances, unsure if they'd heard correctly. Vincent bent down, gathering the scattered papers and tucking the forged document safely into his coat pocket. His mind was racing. If the authorization was already in the system, he'd need access to the internal transaction server to stop it. Only 3 people could override that process: himself, the head of compliance, and Preston Whitfield. He looked back toward the building entrance, where employees were pretending not to stare. Raymond, he said to his driver, cancel my schedule. Call the legal team and tell them I need Patricia Cruz in the boardroom right now. Yes, sir. Vincent stood upright again, adjusting his tie with deliberate calm. The boy beside him sniffled, wiping his face with the back of his hand. Terrell, right? Vincent asked. The boy nodded. You're going to tell me exactly what you heard last night. Every word. Terrell's eyes widened. Even the bad ones. Vincent managed a thin smile. Especially the bad ones. He took a step toward the lobby doors. Every instinct told him to stay composed, to handle this quietly, but the unease clawing at the edge of his mind wouldn't let go. 15 years of trust. 15 years of loyalty. Could it all have been a lie? As the elevator doors closed behind them, Vincent's reflection caught his eye, controlled, sharp, but with a flicker of disbelief in his stare. If the boy was right, Horizon Financial was seconds away from ruin. And the man standing beside him wasn't just an innocent kid. He was the reason Vincent still had a chance to stop it. The marble floor echoed under Vincent's sharp steps as he stormed toward the elevators, Terrell hurrying beside him. His phone was already at his ear. This is Carver. Lock down the 39th floor. Now. No one in or out until I get there. His voice carried an edge no one in Horizon's lobby had ever heard before. He didn't wait for a response. The second line connected. Preston Whitfield. Vincent. Preston's tone was smooth, practiced, the same tone he used with investors. What's going on? I was just about to head to the boardroom. Stay there, Vincent said, his voice cutting through the background noise of office chatter. Don't touch anything. I'm on my way up. A short pause followed. It was half a second too long, but Vincent felt it like a pinprick. Preston's voice came back, casual yet strained. Of course. Is something wrong? Vincent's jaw tightened. We'll talk when I get there. He ended the call before Preston could reply. The elevator doors slid shut. The hum of the motor filled the silence between him and the boy. Terrell clutched the straps of his backpack, looking nervous but proud to be beside the man he'd tried so hard to help. Tell me everything, Vincent said, pressing the button for the 39th floor. Start from last night. Terrell's voice came out small but steady. My grandma, Dorothy Banks, she cleans offices upstairs. She had to work late, 'cause they said somebody left a mess after a meeting. I was supposed to stay at home, but the babysitter didn't come. So she brought me. Vincent nodded slightly, listening as the numbers climbed. She was cleaning, and I was sitting near the elevator with my comic book. It was really quiet until that man came out, the one with the glasses. Mr. Preston. He didn't see me. He was talking on the phone, laughing. He said, "By 9 tomorrow, it'll all be mine. The fool won't even know he signed it himself." Terrell's eyes lifted toward Vincent. "I heard him say something about a transfer. When he left, I saw that paper in the trash can. It had your name on it, so I took it." Vincent's chest felt heavier with each word. The elevator chimed softly as it passed the 20th floor. "Your grandmother's name is Dorothy Banks?" he asked. Terrell nodded. "Yes, sir." Vincent's gaze softened. "I know that name." He thought for a moment, the memory surfacing from years buried under meetings and reports. 3 years ago, I approved a community development loan for a woman named Lorraine Jenkins. Her paperwork had gone through your grandmother's cleaning company. I remember now, Dorothy came to say thank you herself. She told me that loan saved her friend's house. Terrell's eyes widened in surprise. "Grandma talks about that all the time. She says you're one of the good ones." Vincent let out a quiet breath. "I'd forgotten about it within a week. She remembered it for 3 years." He looked down at the boy, a hint of guilt flickering in his expression. She was right to believe good people matter. The elevator dinged again. 39th floor, the robotic voice announced. The door slid open to the gleaming conference corridor, lined with glass and brushed steel. Through the large windows, the Schuylkill River shimmered under the morning sun. The city spread wide and confident beneath them, but inside Vincent's chest, his heartbeat was unsteady. Terrell followed close as they approached the double glass doors of the boardroom. Inside, 12 executives sat around the polished oak table. A large digital clock on the wall read 9:08 a.m. Preston Whitfield stood near the head of the table, exactly where Vincent usually stood. His navy suit was immaculate, his gold cufflinks catching the light as he gestured toward a presentation slide. When he saw Vincent stride in, with a child beside him, his confident expression flickered for just a moment. "Vincent," he said, trying to sound amused. "We were just about to start without you." Vincent didn't answer. He walked straight to the table, pulled the crumpled document from his coat pocket, and spread it flat across the polished surface. The room fell silent. Patricia Cruz, Horizon's legal counsel and a former federal prosecutor, leaned forward. Her sharp eyes scanned the page, her brow furrowing. "Where did this come from?" she asked carefully. Vincent didn't take his eyes off Preston. "From the trash on this floor. My name's on it, but I never signed it. It's a transfer authorization, $300 million, to an offshore account." A ripple of alarm passed through the room. Preston gave a smooth laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "I don't know what that is, Vincent. You must have gotten a forgery from somewhere. Who handed this to you?" Vincent stepped aside slightly, revealing Terrell. The boy's small frame looked almost out of place among the suits and polished shoes, but his expression was firm. "I did," Terrell said quietly. "I found it last night. I saw you, Mr. Preston." Preston blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "What him?" He forced a smile. "Vincent, you can't be serious. You're letting a child accuse your CFO." Patricia spoke again, more alert now. "Vincent, the account number listed here, this isn't any of ours. And the authorization code matches Horizon's encrypted system. Whoever created this had access." Vincent turned the paper toward her. "Could a forgery access those keys?" "No," she said flatly. "Not without internal clearance." The air in the room grew tight. Preston's confident stance began to slip. He opened his mouth, searching for composure. "There's an explanation for this," he said, his smile returning. Thinner now. Someone's trying to set me up. Vincent's voice was calm, deliberate. If that's true, then you won't mind us tracing the account in real time. Preston hesitated. Of course not. Patricia was already reaching for her laptop. We have 7 minutes until the scheduled transfer. I can pull the live authorization logs from compliance. Vincent folded his arms, watching Preston closely. Every instinct told him that the hesitation he'd heard on the phone wasn't imagination. Preston's face remained smooth, but his fingers tapped the table, once, twice, too quickly. Vincent's eyes didn't leave him. Terrell said he heard you on the phone last night. Laughing. Bragging that by 9, it would all be yours. The tapping stopped. For the first time in 15 years, Preston's confident expression faltered completely. Vincent leaned forward slightly. I trusted you with everything, he said quietly. My company. My people. Their futures. He placed his palm flat on the transfer document. If this is your doing, Preston, I'll make sure you face every consequence the law allows. The digital clock ticked over to 9:10 a.m. Patricia looked up from her laptop. We've got movement, she said quickly. A pending transaction flag just went live in the pension fund system. Vincent's jaw set. Freeze it. Preston's mouth opened, but no words came out. Terrell stood beside Vincent, watching the adults with wide, fearful eyes. For the first time since this began, he felt the weight of what he'd set in motion, but also the strange relief of knowing he had done the right thing. Vincent placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. You did good, Terrell. Really good. The room buzzed with tension, screens flickering as the legal and compliance teams rushed to act. Preston stood silent, his confidence stripped away 1 second at a time. Vincent glanced once more at the clock. 4 minutes left. 4 minutes to stop a betrayal 15 years in the making. And this time, he wasn't facing it alone. Vincent stood at the head of the boardroom table, his expression carved in steel. The crumpled document lay between them, the evidence of betrayal glaring up from the polished surface. Preston still tried to maintain composure, but his posture betrayed the growing panic under his practiced calm. Vincent's voice came out measured, cold enough to freeze the room. That paper was found in a trash can on this floor. You left it behind because you didn't realize a cleaning woman and her grandson were working late. A few board members exchanged shocked glances. Preston gave a short laugh that cracked in the middle. You can't be serious. You think I'd throw away something like that? It's absurd. Someone's setting me up. Patricia Cruz slid the document toward her, the faint scrape of paper sounding unnaturally loud. She studied the forged signature with a precise eye. The timestamp says 9:15, she said, looking at her watch. That's 8 minutes from now. If this authorization isn't stopped, the transfer will execute automatically. The room shifted into quiet chaos. Murmurs, phones pulled out, fingers typing commands. Preston's gaze darted from face to face, measuring the crumbling wall of support around him. Vincent's eyes never left him. You can stop pretending, he said. We've already pulled security footage. You entered this floor at 8:47, swiped your keycard at the conference suite, and stayed for 7 minutes. The logs confirm it. For the first time, Preston's composure slipped completely. His polished mask cracked, revealing something harder beneath, anger, fear, and a desperate kind of pride. His shoulders slumped for a moment before he straightened, eyes flashing. You were supposed to be distracted, he hissed, his tone suddenly stripped of charm. The expansion vote, that was supposed to hold your attention. The money would have been gone before anyone noticed the pension account had been touched. Patricia's fingers froze over her keyboard. Several board members turned toward Vincent, their expressions tightening in disbelief. Vincent's jaw clenched. Why, Preston? We built this together. You had everything: respect, authority, trust. Why throw it away? Preston's face hardened. You want the truth? Fine. I got tired of being in your shadow. You got the interviews, the magazine covers, the speaking tours. I did the math, the groundwork, the balancing act that made you look brilliant. You got the glory, I got spreadsheets. His voice rose, cracking with bitterness. Every time the company grew, every time Horizon was praised, I was just the guy who made the numbers work. That's all anyone ever saw. The silence that followed felt heavy, stretched thin between two men who had once shared dreams and late-night strategy sessions. You could have talked to me, Vincent said quietly. We were friends. Preston laughed without humor. Friends? You were weeks away from becoming a billionaire when Horizon goes public. I was getting a standard equity package and a pat on the back. You think I didn't notice? The world was about to hail you as a genius, while I faded into the background, again. He jabbed a finger toward the document. That money was supposed to be my due. 300 million, through accounts no one could trace. Just once, I wanted to be free of watching someone else win with my work. Vincent's expression didn't waver. So you decided to steal from teachers? From firefighters? From families who trusted us with their savings? Preston's tone softened, almost pleading. The returns this quarter would have covered the gap. No one would have lost a dime. It was temporary, a transfer. I was going to move it back before anyone knew. Patricia spoke up, voice low but cutting. That's not how pension law works. You tamper with those funds, you destroy lives. It's not just illegal, it's unforgivable. Preston's mouth opened to argue, but Vincent's voice cut him off. You keep saying temporary, as if theft can be excused by intent. You tell yourself you deserve more, but what you really wanted was power, without accountability. The air felt charged, every eye locked on the two men who once built the company's foundation. Preston tried to hold his ground, but the confidence that had fueled him was gone. Vincent leaned forward, his tone quieter now, almost sorrowful. You know what really stopped you, Preston? Not compliance systems. Not me. A 5-year-old boy. Preston blinked, thrown off balance. Vincent continued, his gaze steady. He heard you bragging about your little plan. He didn't know the details, but he knew it was wrong. He saw a paper with my name and saved it. That boy, who has nothing, showed more integrity than you've had in your entire career. The words landed like blows. Preston's shoulders sagged, his voice came out thin. You think this changes anything? You'll still be the hero. You'll stand there loved, respected while I... Vincent interrupted softly. While you face the consequences of your choices. The digital clock on the wall clicked over to 9:12 a.m. Patricia looked up from her laptop. I've traced the transaction. I can reverse it, but I'll need your biometric clearance, Vincent. He stepped forward, placed his thumb on the scanner, and watched the screen flash authorization cancelled. A murmur of relief swept through the room. Preston stared at the monitor, realizing the empire he'd tried to steal had just sealed his fate instead. He gave a short, broken laugh. So that's it? You win again. Vincent didn't respond. He looked at the man who had once been his right hand, his closest ally, and saw not an enemy, but a tragedy. A man who had traded loyalty for envy, friendship for greed. Security guards appeared at the doorway, waiting silently for instruction. Preston didn't resist when they approached. His voice was hoarse now, stripped of bravado. You'll see, Vincent. Everyone gets tired of being the one in the shadows. Vincent said nothing. He just watched as the man who once helped him build Horizon Financial was led out of the room in silence, leaving behind a trail of ambition turned to ash. As the doors closed, Vincent looked around at the board members, faces pale, shocked, yet grateful. He took a breath. We still have work to do, he said quietly. Let's make sure no one ever comes this close again. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that inside those walls, a betrayal had just been exposed, 8 minutes before disaster. The sound of police radios broke the stunned silence of the 39th floor. 2 uniformed officers entered first, followed by detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit. Their arrival felt surreal, like a scene that didn't belong in Horizon Financial's glass and marble world. Preston Whitfield, once the company's most trusted figure after Vincent, was now surrounded by law enforcement. His face had gone pale, but the arrogance hadn't completely vanished. "This is a misunderstanding," he insisted, voice trembling between outrage and desperation. "You can't just walk in here and, Vincent, tell them. You know me." Vincent stood a few feet away, his expression unreadable. The weight of everything that had just unfolded sat heavy on his chest. "I did know you," he said quietly. "But I don't know who you've become." Preston's protests grew weaker as the detectives stepped forward. One read his rights while another secured his wrists with a pair of steel handcuffs. The metallic click echoed through the conference room, final and merciless. Cameras from security staff captured the entire scene for documentation. Horizon's first scandal born not from market failure, but from betrayal within its own walls. As Preston was led past him, Vincent couldn't help but remember their early days. 2 young men sharing bad coffee and big dreams in a rented office above a South Philly deli. Now one was leaving in cuffs, the other standing amid the wreckage of trust. The board regrouped quickly once the room cleared. Patricia Cruz took charge of the technical response, issuing commands with sharp precision. "Freeze all transactions tied to account 0029. Confirm with First National's clearinghouse that no external transfer has executed." Vincent nodded, barely hearing her words. His thoughts raced. How close they'd come to disaster. How many lives would have been destroyed if Terrell hadn't stepped forward. Authorization log secured, Patricia confirmed after a tense few minutes. Transfer attempt blocked at 9:13. We were 2 minutes from losing control. 2 minutes. That was all that separated Horizon's survival from collapse. Vincent exhaled, long and shaky. The board members around him looked to him for direction, their faith shaken but intact. "We'll call an emergency session," he said. "Full internal audit, all departments. If Preston had help, we'll find out." They agreed unanimously. Fear still hung in the air, but so did determination, the kind that comes after standing on the edge and surviving. When the meeting adjourned, Vincent found himself in the quiet of his office, the city's skyline gleaming beyond the glass. Patricia entered without knocking, a folder in hand. "The press already caught wind of police activity here," she said. "How do you want to handle it?" Vincent stared out at the skyline before answering. "Keep it simple. Say it was an internal matter, identified and resolved. No names, no drama. Let the legal system handle the rest." Patricia gave a short nod. "Good call. We'll protect the company's credibility, but make sure Preston's actions face full exposure in court." Her tone softened as she closed the folder. "You know, if that little boy hadn't spoken up, 50,000 people would have lost everything they worked for. Their pensions, their homes, their sense of safety." Vincent turned toward her, his expression shifting from fatigue to quiet awe. 50,000 families, he repeated. "And one 5-year-old stopped it." Patricia smiled faintly. "Sometimes heroes come in small packages." The thought hit him with a force that words couldn't capture. The child's courage had tipped the balance of an entire empire. Moments later, Vincent made his way to the lobby, where Terrell sat on a marble bench, his small legs swinging nervously. Security guards stood nearby, trying not to make him uncomfortable. The boy looked up as Vincent approached, eyes wide and uncertain. "You're not mad anymore?" he asked softly. Vincent knelt in front of him, ignoring the stares of executives and staff who had gathered at a distance. His expensive suit brushed the floor, but he didn't care. He rested his hands gently on Terrell's small shoulders. "No, Terrell," he said, voice thick with emotion. I'm not mad. I'm grateful. You saved 50,000 families today. Teachers, firefighters, nurses. People who deserve to know their money is safe. You did something incredible. Terrell's lips trembled as he spoke. My grandma says you're one of the good ones. She says there aren't many of those left. When you find good people, you gotta protect them. For a moment, Vincent couldn't speak. The sincerity in that tiny voice, the simplicity of the truth behind it, it pierced deeper than any accusation or apology could. He pulled the boy into an embrace, holding him tightly. The cameras that had recorded moments of corporate crisis now captured something purer, a man humbled, a child honored. I'll never forget what you did, Vincent whispered. You're one of the bravest people I've ever met. Terrell's voice was muffled against his shoulder. Does that mean you're gonna be okay now? Vincent smiled through the weight of everything he'd lost and nearly lost. Yeah, he said. Because of you, we all will be. Around them, the board members stood silent, some visibly moved. It wasn't the kind of moment you could plan or fake, it was the truth of gratitude laid bare. As Vincent stood, he looked at the boy one last time before guiding him toward the waiting car that would take him home. He felt something shift within him, a clarity that success had never given, a humility that wealth couldn't buy. He realized how close he'd come to walking into that morning's meeting blind to betrayal. How one small voice had been the difference between ruin and redemption. When the news later aired a short clip showing Preston's arrest and Horizon's official statement, the company's reputation remained intact. The anchor's tone was brief and neutral. Sources confirmed the issue was handled internally with no loss to clients. But behind that polished headline lay the truth. A child's courage had held back an ocean. That night, as Vincent sat in his penthouse, the city lights reflecting off the window, he found himself thinking of Dorothy and Terrell, not as people who needed help, but as the reason decency still mattered in a world driven by numbers. The crisis was over, but something inside him had changed permanently. He knew that morning's events would never fade into just another chapter of corporate history. They were a reminder that honor could still come from the smallest, most unexpected places. And as he stared out into the glow of Philadelphia, he silently promised himself one thing: this would not be forgotten. The drive north from Center City was short in distance, but felt like miles in meaning. As Vincent's car moved past the shimmering lights of Rittenhouse Square into the older worn-out blocks of North Philadelphia, the city's story changed. Clean sidewalks turned to cracked pavement, and polished storefronts gave way to weathered brick walls. He had not been here in years. His driver slowed near a narrow street lined with tired apartment buildings, their paint faded, their windows flickering with weak yellow light. Vincent stepped out, the night air thick with the scent of fried food and exhaust. The building he approached leaned slightly toward the street, its front steps chipped but swept clean. Inside, the elevator rattled as it climbed, each floor marked by the hum of televisions, the faint echo of arguments, and the smell of old cooking oil that had seeped into the walls over decades. When he reached the 5th floor, a small plaque on the door read Banks. He knocked lightly. Dorothy opened the door before he could knock again, her gray hair wrapped in a scarf, her expression calm, almost expectant. I had a feeling I'd be seeing you, she said, stepping aside to let him in. The apartment was small but spotless. A narrow living room flowed into a kitchen that smelled of baked chicken and herbs. Family photographs filled every inch of the wall, school portraits, church events, snapshots of birthdays. There were no expensive decorations, but everything had its place. Terrell sat cross-legged on a faded couch, a bowl of cereal on his lap. When he saw Vincent, his eyes widened with surprise and excitement. "You came," he said, setting the bowl down and running over. Vincent smiled, his exhaustion softening. "Of course I did. I had to thank your grandma properly." Dorothy motioned for him to sit. "You want coffee? It's instant, but it's hot." "I'd love some," Vincent replied, lowering himself onto a chair that creaked slightly under his weight. As she poured the coffee, he took in the details: the carefully folded blanket on the couch, the row of work shoes lined neatly by the door, the worn Bible resting on the table beside a stack of unopened bills. This was a life built on endurance, not luxury. Dorothy handed him the cup and sat across from him. Her back was straight, her gaze direct. "Before you start, let me say this, I don't want charity, Mr. Carver," she said. "We don't need charity. We need opportunity." Vincent nodded slowly. "That's exactly why I'm here." Her eyebrows rose a little, but she stayed quiet, waiting for him to continue. "I've been thinking all day about how close we came to losing everything," Vincent said. "If Terrell hadn't spoken up, Horizon Financial would have collapsed. 50,000 people would have lost their savings. That's not something I can forget. But what struck me most is why he did it, because you raised him to protect good people." Dorothy smiled faintly. "He's a good boy. Always has been. But good don't pay the rent." Vincent set his cup down. "That's going to change. Horizon is opening a community outreach office right here in North Philadelphia. Financial education, small business support, affordable loan programs. I want you to run it." Dorothy blinked, unsure if she'd heard him correctly. "Run it?" "Yes," Vincent said simply. "Full-time position. Real salary. Benefits. We'll set up the office in one of our vacant retail spaces near Broad Street. You'll help people like yourself, people who just need someone to give them a fair chance." She looked down at her hands. "Mr. Carver, I've been cleaning other people's offices for 30 years. You really think I can run one?" "I do," he said firmly. "You know this community better than anyone I could ever hire. You understand struggle, discipline, and dignity. That's leadership, Dorothy." Her eyes shimmered with quiet disbelief. "I've worked 3 jobs since Terrell's mama passed. I was saving to get us out of here, to somewhere with better schools, safer streets. I thought maybe by the time he's 10, I'd have enough." Vincent's gaze softened. "You won't have to wait that long." He turned toward Terrell, who was now standing beside his grandmother, clutching her apron. "And for you," Vincent continued, "we're setting up a college fund, fully covered. Any school you want, when you're old enough. All you have to do is keep being brave, keep being honest, and keep protecting good people." Terrell looked up at him, eyes wide with wonder. "Does this mean Grandma doesn't have to work 3 jobs anymore?" Dorothy covered her mouth as tears began to fall. "Oh Lord," she whispered. "You don't know what this means to us." Vincent stood, his voice gentle but firm. "Yes, Terrell. It means you get to stay together. It means your grandma works one good job that makes a difference, and she'll be helping families just like yours find their way." Dorothy shook her head slowly, still in disbelief. "I never thought someone like you would come here, let alone offer something like this." Vincent smiled. "Someone like me? Maybe I'm the one who needed to come here, to remember what real strength looks like." For a long moment, no one spoke. The sound of a siren passed outside, faint but steady. Terrell climbed onto his grandmother's lap, and she wrapped her arms around him, holding him close. Vincent reached for his coat, but paused at the door. "Dorothy, this isn't charity," he said softly. "This is recognition, of you, of your grandson, of what it means to do the right thing even when no one's watching." She wiped her eyes, managing a smile. "I'll take that kind of recognition any day." As Vincent stepped into the dim hallway, he looked back one last time. The apartment wasn't large or luxurious, but it radiated something his penthouse never had: peace earned through honesty. On the drive back downtown, he didn't speak much. His thoughts lingered on the boy's courage, the woman's pride, and how close he'd come to losing everything that truly mattered. For the first time in years, Vincent Carver felt not like a man who ran a company, but like one who finally understood why he built it in the first place. 6 months later, Broad Street looked a little different. Between a used bookstore and a Jamaican bakery, The glass doors of the Horizon Financial Community Development Center opened to a crowd of neighbors, teachers, and small business owners. The gold letters on the window gleamed in the morning sun, but it wasn't the sign that made the block feel new. It was the sight of Dorothy Banks, standing proudly in her navy suit, holding a pair of scissors tied with blue ribbon. The applause that followed the ribbon cutting was loud enough to echo off the brick walls. Vincent stood to one side, clapping quietly, watching Dorothy beam as she welcomed the first families inside. The space had been designed to feel open and safe, plants near the windows, soft lighting, children's drawings framed on the walls. Where most banks displayed corporate awards, this office showcased community success stories. The bakery that reopened after a fire, the barber who now owned his shop, the single mother who'd started her own catering business. Dorothy moved through the room with purpose. She spoke to clients like an old friend, explained forms without condescension, and reminded them, always, that their effort mattered. Every yes she gave on a loan carried the same grace she once brought to sweeping a spotless hallway. The people trusted her because she understood them. Terrell, meanwhile, was thriving. He attended a charter school just a few blocks away, where his teachers already saw something rare in him, a blend of sharp intelligence and quiet empathy. When other children argued, Terrell was the one who listened. When a classmate dropped her crayons, he picked them up before anyone else moved. Once his teacher told Dorothy, "He's going to be a leader one day, not the loud kind, but the kind people follow because he listens." While life in North Philadelphia began to shift, the city's courthouse downtown was a different kind of stage. Preston Whitfield's trial drew attention across the state. Once celebrated as a visionary CFO, now revealed as a man who had risked the livelihoods of thousands. Vincent sat through every day of testimony, his expression composed but his chest heavy. When his turn came to testify, he spoke clearly about trust, oversight, and what it felt like to discover betrayal sitting across the same table you once built dreams upon. Preston avoided his eyes through most of the proceedings. But during the sentencing, when the judge pronounced 15 years for attempted embezzlement and fraud, Preston looked at him at last. It wasn't hatred, just the hollow stare of someone who'd gambled everything on greed and lost. Outside the courthouse, a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer approached Vincent with a question about the company's recovery. He answered carefully, as he always did. But a week later, the paper's feature told a different story, not about corporate survival, but about the 5-year-old whistleblower who saved 50,000 pensions. For a short while, Terrell's photograph appeared everywhere. Morning talk shows wanted interviews, and Horizon's social media overflowed with congratulations. Dorothy politely declined every request. "We've got work to do," she told them. "We're not here for applause." As the months passed, attention faded, replaced by quiet progress. The center became a steady heartbeat in the community, and Vincent made it a point to visit once a month. He'd sit at one of the small round tables with Terrell, usually over chocolate milk and coffee, asking about school and dreams. One afternoon, Terrell showed him a drawing, a tall building with a sign that read Carver and Banks. "What's this?" Vincent asked. "Our business," Terrell said seriously. "When I grow up, I'm going to help people like Grandma does. But I'll need a partner who knows the numbers." Vincent laughed softly. "I'll start studying again, just in case." A year later, the world had settled into its new rhythm. The storm had passed. The company was stronger, leaner, wiser. From his office on the 40th floor, Vincent watched the sun drift low over the Delaware River, staining the glass towers gold and crimson. On his desk sat a framed photograph taken the day the center opened. He and Terrell standing together, both smiling with the kind of joy that can't be staged. He often caught himself staring at that photo when the office grew quiet. The thought that always returned wasn't about the near collapse of his empire, or even Preston's betrayal. It was something deeper, how close he had come to ignoring the warning that saved everything. If Terrell hadn't stood in that marble lobby, trembling but unyielding, if Vincent had let pride push him forward without listening, every pension, every family's future would have vanished in minutes. The truth that changed everything wasn't found in court records or balance sheets. It was in the realization that the smallest voice had carried the greatest weight. Sophisticated systems hadn't saved Horizon. A child had, one who believed that doing the right thing mattered, even if no one listened at first. Vincent leaned back in his chair, eyes tracing the city skyline. He understood now that kindness wasn't weakness. It was an investment that always found its return when the world grew dark. Trust wasn't about contracts or handshakes. It was about character tested under pressure. It had to be earned daily, and guarded carefully. Somewhere in an office on Broad Street, Dorothy was closing up for the evening, turning off the lights and locking the door. Somewhere, a little boy was finishing his homework, dreaming about what their future company might look like. Vincent smiled, the kind that came not from success but from peace. He whispered to himself, "Someone's always watching." Sometimes it was a cleaning woman who believed in hard work. Sometimes it was her grandson, who refused to stay silent when the world needed truth. And in that quiet understanding, Vincent Carver realized that real wealth would never be measured in numbers, or towers, or portfolios, but in goodness put into the world, in the trust that, when darkness came again, someone would remember, someone would care, and someone, maybe a child, would stand in the light. This story reminds us that kindness has a way of echoing through time, reaching further than we ever expect. One forgotten act of compassion, a simple favor done without seeking reward, became the thread that saved an entire company, 50,000 families, and a man who almost lost everything chasing success. It shows that no gesture is ever too small, no moment of goodness ever wasted. So ask yourself, what kindness can you offer today that might change someone's tomorrow? Maybe it's a word of encouragement, a helping hand, or taking a moment to listen when someone needs it most. You never know who's watching, or how far that act will travel. If this story moved you, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and share your own example of kindness that made a difference. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories like this, because tomorrow, we'll bring you another true-to-life reminder that goodness still matters. Your support means the world to us. It helps keep these stories alive and reminds others that hope, integrity, and compassion still win in the end. Thank you for watching, and remember, be the good person someone else might need to protect someday.